Have you ever remembered something small, something so simple that you almost forgot it even happened? And yet, years later, it comes back to you, not as a memory, but as a feeling, a quiet weight, a soft regret, a question that has no answer anymore. What if I had done something different? In life, we often think that big decisions shape everything: the job we choose, the city we move to, the relationships we start or end. But sometimes, it's not the big moments that stay with us. It's the small ones, the ones we ignore, the ones we delay, the ones we think, this doesn't matter right now. I didn't understand that before. I used to believe that regret only comes from big mistakes, from clear, obvious failures. But now, when I look back, my biggest regrets are not loud. They are quiet. They don't come from what I did. They come from what I didn't do. This is the story of 5 small moments that I ignored and how they slowly became my biggest regrets. The first moment didn't feel important at all. It was a normal day. Nothing special. Nothing unusual. I had just finished work. I was tired. My mind was still full of tasks, unfinished thoughts, and things I needed to do the next day. When I got home, I saw my phone light up. A message. It was from my father. He didn't usually text much, so when he did, it was often something simple. "Are you free to talk tonight?" That was it. No explanation, no urgency, just a simple question. I looked at the message for a few seconds, then I looked away. I told myself, I'll reply later. I wanted to rest, just a little, just a few minutes. I sat down, opened my laptop, started watching something. Time passed, not a lot, maybe an hour, maybe 2. At some point, I remembered the message, but by then, I felt even more tired. It's late now, I thought. I'll call him tomorrow. That felt reasonable. That felt normal. So I didn't reply. The next morning, I woke up late, rushed through my routine, checked my phone quickly, but didn't think about the message. Work started. Meetings, emails, tasks. The day moved quickly, too quickly, and by the time I remembered again, it was already evening. I'll call him this weekend, I told myself, because weekends feel like the right time, the better time, the more free time. But weekends come and go, and life fills them, just like weekdays. Small plans, small distractions, small reasons to delay. Days passed, then one evening, my phone rang. It wasn't my father, it was my mother. Her voice was different, quieter, slower. "He's in the hospital," she said. Everything inside me stopped. I didn't ask many questions. I didn't think clearly. I just went. The hospital felt cold, too bright, too quiet in a strange way. When I saw him, he looked smaller, weaker, different from the person I remembered just days before. He smiled when he saw me, but it wasn't the same smile. There was something behind it, something I couldn't name. I sat next to him, tried to speak, but the words felt heavy. We talked a little about simple things. How I was, how work was, nothing important, nothing real. At one point, he looked at me and said something I will never forget. "I wanted to talk to you the other day." That sentence felt heavier than anything else. I nodded. "I saw your message," I said. "I was just busy." I didn't finish the sentence because even as I said it, it didn't feel true, or at least not important enough. He didn't say anything after that, just smiled gently, as if it didn't matter. But it did. I stayed there for a while. Then I left, because visiting hours ended, because that's what people do. They come, they sit, they leave, but something inside me didn't leave. It stayed there with that message, with that moment, and with that simple question, "Are you free to talk tonight?" A few days later, he got better. He came home. Life slowly returned to normal, but not completely, because something had changed, not outside, inside me. I started thinking about that message over and over again. Why didn't I reply? Why did I wait? What was I really doing that was more important? The truth was simple: nothing. Nothing I did that night mattered more than that moment. But I didn't see it then because it felt small, because it felt like something I could do later. That's the danger of small moments. They don't look important. They don't feel urgent. They don't ask for your full attention. So we delay them, ignore them, postpone them. And we tell ourselves, it's okay. There will be another time. But sometimes there isn't. Sometimes that small moment was the moment, the only one that mattered. I still think about that message, not every day, but often enough, and every time, it brings the same feeling, a quiet regret, not loud, not overwhelming, just there, a reminder that life is not only made of big events, it's made of small opportunities to listen, to respond, to connect. And when we miss them, we don't always get another chance. That was the first moment, the first regret, and it taught me something I wish I had learned earlier. When someone reaches out to you, pause, look, listen, because what feels small now may not feel small later. The second moment didn't come with a message. It didn't appear on a screen. It didn't ask for my attention. It was quieter than that. So quiet that I almost didn't notice it at all. It happened in the middle of an ordinary day, a day that looked exactly like many others. I was busy, not in a dramatic way, just constantly occupied. There were things to do, deadlines to meet, small problems to solve. My mind was always moving, always thinking about the next task. That day, I stopped at a small cafe, not because I wanted to relax, but because I needed a place to sit and continue working. I ordered something simple, sat near the window, opened my laptop, the usual routine. Around me, people were talking softly. Some were alone, some were with friends. I didn't pay much attention. I rarely did. When you are used to being busy, everything around you becomes background, just noise, just movement, just something that exists but doesn't require your presence. After a while, someone sat down at the table next to me. I noticed it for a second. Then I went back to my screen. But then, something made me look again. It was an older man. He was sitting alone. In front of him was a cup of coffee that he wasn't drinking. His hands rested on the table, still, almost too still. He wasn't looking at his phone. He wasn't reading anything. He wasn't doing anything at all. He was just sitting there, looking out the window. At first, I didn't think much about it. People sit alone all the time. People think, people rest, but something about him felt different. There was a kind of stillness that didn't feel peaceful. It felt heavy. I don't know how to explain it clearly. It was in the way he sat, in the way he looked outside, in the way he didn't move, as if he was waiting, or remembering, or maybe feeling something he couldn't share. For a brief moment, I thought about saying something. Not anything complicated, just something simple. "Hello. Nice weather today?" Anything. But then, my mind spoke. "It's not your business. He might not want to talk. You'll make it awkward." And the strongest thought of all, you don't have time. So I looked away, back to my screen, back to my work, back to what felt important. Minutes passed, maybe more. I don't remember exactly. At some point, I packed my things and closed my laptop, finished my drink, and as I stood up to leave, I looked at him one more time. He was still there, in the same position, in the same silence. And for a second, our eyes met. Just for a second. There was something in that moment, something I felt but didn't understand. Then I left. I walked out of the cafe, back into the noise of the street, back into my routine. And just like that, the moment disappeared. Or at least, that's what I thought. A few days later, I returned to the same cafe, not for any special reason, just habit. I sat in the same area, ordered the same drink, and then I noticed something different. The table next to me was empty. Not just empty in that moment, but untouched. The chair was slightly pushed in, the space felt unused. I didn't think much about it, not at first. But then, as I was leaving, I saw the cafe owner. We had spoken a few times before, just small conversations, nothing personal. But this time, I asked a simple question. The older man who sits there sometimes? Have you seen him? The owner paused, just for a moment. Then he said something quietly. He used to come every day. Used to. That word stayed with me. What do you mean? I asked. The owner looked at me, then looked away. He passed away a few days ago. Everything inside me became still. Passed away a few days ago. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. The owner continued. He lost his wife last year. He said, he started coming here every day after that. Every day, sitting at the same table, looking out the same window, alone. He liked when people talked to him, the owner added, even just a little. That sentence felt like something breaking quietly inside me, even just a little. I remembered that moment again, that second when I thought about saying something, that simple idea that I ignored because I was busy, because it felt unnecessary, because it felt small. I left the cafe that day, but I didn't go far. I walked slowly, without direction, because now that moment had changed. It was no longer just a small interaction I skipped. It was something else. Something I couldn't go back to. Something I couldn't fix. I didn't know him. He didn't know me. But for a brief moment, our lives had crossed, and I had a choice to speak or stay silent. And I chose silence, not because I wanted to, but because it felt easier, because it felt safer, because it felt like it didn't matter. But it did, not in a big dramatic way, not in a way that would change everything, but in a small human way, a moment of connection, a chance to make someone feel less alone. And I let it pass. That realization stayed with me, not as guilt, not as something heavy, but as a quiet understanding. We often think that meaningful moments need to be planned. That connection needs time, effort, a special reason. But sometimes it only takes a few words, a small gesture, a simple presence. And when we ignore those moments, we don't always notice what we lose. Because nothing dramatic happens. The world continues. Life moves on. But something small disappears. A chance, a connection, a moment that will never return. I still go to that cafe sometimes. I still sit near the window. And sometimes I look at that empty table, not because I'm sad, but because it reminds me of something important. To look up, to notice, to be present. Because life is not only about what we achieve, it's also about how we connect. And those connections often begin in the smallest moments, the ones we almost ignore, the ones we almost miss, the ones that seem unimportant until they are gone. The third moment was not about a stranger. It was not about someone I barely knew. It was about someone who had always been there, someone close, someone familiar, someone I thought I understood. And maybe that is why I didn't pay enough attention, because when something feels familiar, we stop looking closely. We stop noticing the small changes, the quiet signals, the things that don't ask for attention but still need it. This moment happened slowly, not in one day, not in one clear situation. It happened over time, in small conversations, short replies, quiet pauses. At first, I didn't see anything unusual. Everything looked normal. We still talked, still met sometimes, still shared parts of our lives. But something had changed, not suddenly, not obviously, just slightly. The way they spoke felt different. The way they listened felt distant. The way they smiled felt incomplete. But these were small things, easy to ignore, easy to explain. They're just tired. They're busy. They have their own problems. That's what I told myself. And it sounded reasonable, because life is like that. People change. People go through things. People don't always explain everything. So I didn't ask. I didn't stop and say, "Are you okay?" Not in a real way. Not in a way that invites honesty. I asked casually, lightly, as part of conversation. "How are you?" And they gave a simple answer, "I'm fine," and I accepted it. Because that's what we often do. We ask, but we don't really listen. We hear the answer, but we don't feel it. We move on because it's easier, because going deeper takes time. And sometimes we are afraid of what we might find. There was one evening I remember clearly. We were sitting together, or in a quiet place. Nothing special, just talking. Or at least, that's what it looked like. But the conversation felt slow, not uncomfortable, just empty in some way, like something was missing. There were pauses, longer than usual, moments where neither of us spoke. And in those pauses, I felt something, a question, a tension, something unspoken. It was there, very clearly, and I noticed it. For a brief moment, I really noticed it. I could have said something. I could have asked, "What's on your mind?" Or, "You don't seem like yourself." Or even just, "Do you want to talk?" But I didn't. Because in that moment, another thought appeared. What if I'm wrong? What if it's nothing? What if I make it uncomfortable? And just like that, I chose silence. Again, I smiled, changed the topic, continued the conversation, as if everything was normal. And they followed. They smiled too. They spoke. They stayed in the surface of things. And that moment passed, just like many others. Small, quiet, easy to forget. Or at least, that's what I thought. Over the next few weeks, we spoke less. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just less. Messages became shorter, replies came slower, conversations felt more distant and still. I didn't ask. I told myself, this is normal. People get busy, life changes, and all of that was true. But it wasn't the full truth, because sometimes distance is not just about time. It's about something deeper, something unspoken. One day, I received a message, not long, not detailed, just honest. "I think I need some space." That was it. No explanation, no clear reason, just a quiet decision. I read the message, more than once, trying to understand it, trying to feel what it meant. But the truth was, I already knew. Not clearly, not logically, but somewhere inside, I had felt it coming in those pauses, in those small changes, in those moments I ignored. I just didn't respond to it, not in time. I replied to the message. Of course I did. I said I understood. I said I respected it, and I meant it. But there was something else that I didn't say, something I only understood later. I should have asked sooner. I should have listened more carefully. I should have paid attention to the small signs, because by the time someone asks for space, they have already been feeling it for a long time, not in one moment, not suddenly, but slowly and often, silently. Looking back now, I don't see one big mistake. I see many small ones, moments where I could have been more present, more aware, more willing to go deeper, moments where I chose comfort instead of connection, because asking real questions is not always easy. Listening to honest answers is not always comfortable, but avoiding them comes with a cost, a quiet one, a slow one, a distance that grows without noise, without warning, until one day it becomes real. And by then, it's harder to change, harder to return, harder to understand what was lost along the way. That experience taught me something important. Connection doesn't break in one moment. It fades through small things, through missed opportunities, through questions we don't ask. And when we realize it, we often look back and see all the signs we ignored, not because we didn't care, but because we didn't notice, or we noticed and didn't act. Now, when I sit with someone, I try to listen differently, not just to words, but to pauses, to tone, to what is not being said. And when I feel something is different, I try to be honest, even if it feels uncomfortable, because I have learned silence is not always neutral. Sometimes it is a decision, and sometimes it is a regret waiting to happen. The fourth moment did not feel emotional. It did not feel heavy. It did not feel important. It felt practical, simple, reasonable, even responsible. And maybe that is why I didn't question it. Because sometimes the decisions we regret the most are the ones that made perfect sense at the time. This moment was about work, about opportunity, about time, and about something I thought I could always do later. At that time in my life, I was focused on building something stable, something secure. I wanted progress. I wanted results. I wanted to feel like I was moving forward. Every day had a structure, a plan, a list of things to complete, and I followed it carefully. Because discipline felt like success, where busy felt like productive, and productive felt like safe. One morning, I received an email. It was not from someone I knew well, not a close friend, not a colleague I worked with daily. It was from someone I had met once, at an event, a short conversation, nothing significant. At least, that's what I thought at the time. The email was simple. They were working on a small project, a creative project, something different, something outside of my usual work. They asked if I would like to join, not full-time, not permanently, just to contribute, to explore, to try something new. I read the email slowly. Then I read it again, because something about it caught my attention. It wasn't the project itself, it wasn't the details, it was the feeling. A quiet sense of curiosity. A small voice that said, "This could be interesting," but then another voice appeared, a louder one. "You don't have time. You should focus on your main work. This is not practical." And that voice felt more logical, more responsible, more aligned with the life I was building. So I replied politely. I thanked them for the opportunity. I said it sounded interesting, but I explained that I was too busy right now. Maybe another time. That was the key phrase. Maybe another time? It felt safe, flexible, open, not a full rejection, just a delay. Something I could return to later. Or at least, that's what I believed. Days passed, then weeks. I didn't think much about the email, not at first. I continued my routine, my work, my structured life. Everything felt normal, stable, predictable, and that felt good. But sometimes, late at night, that small thought returned. What if I had said yes? It didn't stay long, just a brief question. Then I pushed it away because I had reasons, good reasons. I was busy, I had priorities, I needed to focus, and all of that was true. But there was another truth that I didn't want to see. I was choosing comfort over curiosity. Months later, I heard about the project again. Not directly, not through that person, but through someone else. They mentioned it casually. It turned into something really interesting, they said. Something really interesting. That phrase stayed with me. I asked a few more questions, listened carefully. The project had grown, evolved, and expanded into something bigger. Not huge, not world-changing, but meaningful, creative, alive, and suddenly, that small email didn't feel small anymore. It felt like a door I had seen, but chose not to open, not because it was locked, but because I thought there would always be another one, another opportunity, another moment. But life doesn't always work that way. Some doors don't stay open, not because they close suddenly, but because time moves on. People move on. Projects move on. And the moment passes. I didn't feel regret immediately, not in a strong way, just a quiet realization. I missed something, not something I needed, not something that would have changed everything, but something that could have added a different dimension to my life, like a different experience, a different path, and I chose not to explore it, not because I couldn't, but because I didn't make space for it. That was the real reason, not time, not responsibility, but priority. I didn't see it as important enough to say yes. That realization changed how I think about time. Before, I believed that time was something I managed, something I organized, something I used efficiently. But now, I see something else. Time is also something we trade. We trade it for comfort, for routine, for things that feel safe, and sometimes we trade it away from things that could grow us, not because we don't want them, but because they don't fit into the structure we created. Looking back, I understand that saying yes to everything is not the answer. We can't do everything. We shouldn't do everything. But we also need to recognize when something feels different, when something creates that small spark of curiosity, that quiet interest, because those moments often lead somewhere meaningful, not always successful, not always easy, but meaningful. And when we ignore them, we don't always notice the loss immediately because nothing breaks, nothing disappears, life continues, but something subtle is missing, an experience we didn't have, a version of ourselves we didn't explore, and that absence can stay with us, not as pain, not as regret that hurts deeply, but as a quiet question. What if? Now, when I receive an opportunity, I don't only ask, is this practical? I also ask, is this meaningful? Does this spark something inside me? And if the answer is yes, I try to listen to it, even if it's inconvenient, even if it doesn't fit perfectly, because not everything valuable fits into a plan. Some things need space, and if we don't create that space, we might never see what could have been. The fifth moment was the quietest of all. It didn't involve a message. It didn't involve another person. It didn't even involve a clear decision. It was something softer, something easier to ignore. It was a moment with myself. And for a long time, I didn't even realize it existed. Because when we think about regret, we often think about what we didn't do for others, the calls we didn't make, the words we didn't say, the chances we didn't take. But sometimes, the deepest regret comes from something else, from the way we ignore ourselves. This moment didn't happen in one day. It happened slowly, in small choices, daily habits, quiet patterns. At that time, my life looked fine from the outside. I had work, responsibilities, a routine. Everything seemed in place. But inside, there was something I didn't pay attention to. A feeling, a quiet voice, not loud, not urgent, just there. It appeared in small moments. In the morning, when I woke up and felt no real energy to begin the day. At night, when everything was quiet and I felt a kind of emptiness I couldn't explain. And during the day, in between tasks, when I paused for a second and asked myself, is this really what I want? But I never stayed with that question. I never explored it because it was uncomfortable and because I had a simple solution: distraction. Whenever that feeling appeared, I filled the space with work, with noise, with something to do, something to avoid the silence. Because in silence, that voice became clearer, and I didn't want to hear it. I told myself, this is normal. Everyone feels this way sometimes. You just need to keep going. And again, those thoughts were not wrong, but they were not complete. Because what I was feeling was not just tiredness. It was not just stress. It was something deeper, something asking for attention, something asking for honesty. But honesty takes time. And more importantly, it takes courage. Because when you are honest with yourself, you might discover things you are not ready to change. So I stayed in the pattern. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. And the feeling didn't disappear. It didn't become stronger either. It just stayed there. Quiet, patient, waiting. One evening, after a long day, I sat alone. No music, no screen, no distraction. Just silence. At first, it felt uncomfortable. Too quiet, too empty. My mind immediately looked for something to do. Check my phone, open something, fill the space. But for some reason, I didn't. I stayed there, just for a few minutes. And in those few minutes, that voice returned, clearer than before, not as a sentence, not as a thought, but as a feeling, a simple awareness. I'm not happy. That was it. No explanation, no drama, just truth. And for the first time, I didn't push it away. I didn't argue with it. I didn't explain it. I just listened. And something inside me became very still because deep down, I already knew it. I just didn't allow myself to admit it. That moment didn't change everything immediately. I didn't suddenly make a big decision. I didn't transform my life overnight, but something shifted. I stopped ignoring myself, at least a little. I started asking small questions, not big ones, not overwhelming ones, just simple ones. What do I actually enjoy? What makes me feel alive? What feels empty, even if it looks good? And at first, the answers were not clear because I had spent so much time not listening. But slowly, they came through small observations, through quiet moments, through honesty. And then I saw something I hadn't seen before. I saw how many small moments I had ignored, moments where I could have rested, but chose to keep working, moments where I could have said no, but chose to agree, moments where I felt something was wrong, but chose to continue, not because I wanted to, but because it was easier, because it was familiar, because it didn't require change. And that was the pattern, not one big mistake, but many small ones. Moments where I didn't listen to myself, moments where I didn't respond, moments where I delayed honesty. And those moments added up, not into a crisis, not into something dramatic, but into a quiet distance between who I was and how I was living. That distance is difficult to notice because life continues, everything looks fine, but inside, something feels off, something feels disconnected, and if we ignore it long enough, it becomes normal. That was the real regret. Not one decision, not one missed opportunity, but the habit of not listening, the habit of choosing comfort over truth, the habit of saying, I'll think about it later, until later never comes. Now, I try to do something different, not perfectly, not always successfully, but intentionally. When I feel something, I pause, even for a moment. When a question appears, I don't immediately push it away. I sit with it, even if it's uncomfortable, because I have learned something simple. The small moments we ignore don't disappear, they wait. And if we keep ignoring them, they become something else, not just moments, but regrets. Quiet ones, patient ones, the kind that don't hurt loudly, but stay with you for a very long time. So if you feel something right now, a small thought, a quiet question, a gentle discomfort, don't ignore it, don't delay it, don't tell yourself it's not important, because maybe it is. And maybe that small moment is trying to tell you something you need to hear. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And if this story made you pause, even just for a moment, then maybe you are already starting to listen to the things that truly matter.